Welcome to the Strong Enough podcast, where we talk about the challenges and celebrate the triumphs of people just like you. I'm your host, Claudia. Today's guest is going to talk about a toxic work environment that had all the hallmarks of an abusive relationship. She's going to share how she finally was able to set boundaries and is now in a much happier, healthier environment. Please help me welcome Amy Stevens. Amy, how are you today?
I'm great, Claudia. How are you doing?
I am doing well, and I have to tell you, your smile is infectious. It literally made me smile right when I saw it. So thank you for bringing such amazing energy here today.
Well, thank you for the invitation. I look forward to this.
I do too. I know we're going to talk about some kind of tough things that you've been through, but then we're going to move towards a better place, a happier place of where you are now. So before we do all that, I would love it if you would tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I reside in Phoenix, Arizona. We're getting ready for our heat of the summer, and it's running on 18 years of me living out here from the Midwest, and I absolutely love the heat. I have had the opportunity of having a variety of career options in my life, and one that has been a steady one has been being a yoga instructor. And I've been teaching now for almost, April marks my 24th year of teaching yoga.
Now, I have a lot of things to say just after that intro, but first off, how could you have been teaching for 24 years? So you started when you were 10, 11
I
ish,
love you, Claudia. Thank you so much.
12? I mean, what are we talking about?
See,
I,
that's the joys of yoga. It makes you look younger than you are.
okay, well then I'm in. So we're going to talk about yoga in a second. First, I have to address the heat that you are experiencing or about to experience. I have been to Phoenix in the middle of the summer. It's warm. It's a little toasty. So the difference is right now we are expecting 5 to 10 inches of snow this evening.
Where are you?
I'm in Breckenridge, Colorado.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it is currently 86 degrees here.
Okay, it's not here. It's about a fourth of that. But you know what I tell people is, and I think you experience the same thing, the lack of humidity makes all the difference in the cold and in the heat, because I would much rather be in 110 in Phoenix than 80 in North Carolina. It's worse.
True. And I'm originally from St. Louis. So you want to talk humidity. One of the things that I always said, I prefer a sauna over a hot tub.
I
And
do
I'm
like my hot tub, but I get what you're saying. I feel you on that, and I don't disagree. So now that we've talked about the weather, I'm gonna give you a quick confession. Yoga isn't my strong suit, so you're gonna work with me through that today. I am the Tin Man when it comes to yoga. Like, I am that meme where the whole yoga class is going on and the Tin Man is there like, this is bullshit. That is me. Before we get into yoga though, we're going to talk about kind of a not so great work experience that you went through, and we're going to talk about how that went and how you made it through. So will you tell a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, so one of my career paths I had, so my background's interior design. So I have this great wealth of knowledge about how buildings are put together, the best things to do for that. And I had a job in construction industry. We'll call it that.
I love it.
And I knew the boss, briefly knew the boss, would consider him to be an acquaintance, and had As I look back on all of this now, I should have known right on target that when he offered me the job, he was in the bathroom urinating. I should have known right then. But as a person, very funny, very what I thought was caring. And as I got into the role, and it was a very stressful situation, it just was a very stressful job in and of itself. We were growing at a very fast pace, and my job was everything. So I was basically his right-hand woman and did everything. And our business grew because we were in this amazing time frame of just making shit happen. Like it just was perfect timing. And I was really good at my job. And because of that, it meant that we all had to kind of step up. So when I first started, there was only there were 5 of us total in the office. When I left a year and a half later, there was 8. So they had hired more people and someone to help relieve some of the stress on me as well. But it just became this one thing on top of another, on top of another. And I felt like I was just being pushed down. Like there was no day off. That was it in a nutshell. And looking back now, I realize all of the red flags. But at that time frame, I loved being kind of in the heart of that industry and what we were doing. I was very passionate about what we were doing. But from the standpoint of not having boundaries, him making contact with me on a Sunday, it was just becoming too much. And I finally, so I mentioned about the yoga. Again, I had 1 yoga class per week that I taught in that time frame because that's what helped keep me sane. Was to be able to go into the studio, be able to teach a class. And I just taught 1 class a week at this time frame with this full-time job. But what was so interesting to me, I got to a point within this business, this career, that my roommate walked by me and didn't say a word. And I always came home, and I came home late because I needed to have 2 hours after everybody else left at the office so that I could get my work done. And it just became ridiculous, and how things continued to be pushed upon me. But I noticed that when she walked by me, she didn't say anything. And so I got up, put my laptop down. I was on the sofa, put my laptop down because I was still working once I was home. Got up, went down the hall, and I was like, "Hey, why aren't you saying anything?" And her comment to me was, "This has been going on for 2 months. The fact that you're just now realizing it, what does that tell you?" And I felt like I had been hit across the face. Like that was such an eye opener to me. And I then just really took a step back and was like, wow, this is not a healthy situation.
There's a lot to unpack there. I think we're going to start with what we're all thinking about. So, your job offer was given to you, I mean, essentially in the bathroom. Because you knew this person, do you feel like you kind of waved off some of the flags, that flag in particular?
I did. Yeah. And he made a joke about it and was like, "This is the only time I have to talk to you today." And I was like, wow. Okay.
I guess that was supposed to make you feel super important, that he I'm saying he, it might not be, did we say he? That this person, was making you feel so valuable that you got the bathroom time.
Mhm. Yep. Oh yeah, I'm telling you, all the red flags. Again, once you're out of that situation, it's literally like, are you kidding me? Why did I allow this to happen?
I think that's really common though, because I mean, it's the same in relationships where once we're out of it, then we can clearly see everything that we should have seen before. And it seems so obvious. Do you, or did you beat yourself up over that for a while? Like, why didn't I see this? Why didn't I address this sooner?
Well, what was really interesting to me was, so he was really great at hiring awesome people. And the team that he had built was incredible, and we all became friends. And the thing that was the hardest for me was stepping away from those friendships because I had to for my own sanity. One of my coworkers kept calling after I left and was like, "You have to get back here. We all miss you. You need to be here." I mean, it was like this plea. And finally, I was like, "Listen, time out. You don't tell me what I can do and don't do." And I was firm about that. And then I said, "Let me guess. He has you doing everything that I was doing and your job." And I called it. I absolutely called it. What was so interesting to me is the backlash that I got from
Hmm.
some of my coworkers, my friends,
Hmm.
the backlash that I got for stepping up for myself. The thing was, I never talked ill of what I was experiencing. I never shared what I was experiencing. What I did was is I put him on the road and made him get out of the office more frequently. I learned that lesson and they all appreciated it. So when I left, his behavior shifted big time. Actually, no, even before I left. So I turned in my notice, gave my 2 week notice. For those last 2 weeks, he didn't talk to me.
I am nodding knowingly because I recently experienced the same thing where when I gave my notice, my supervisor said they were mad at me and didn't talk to me anymore. I find that to be extremely unprofessional.
Childish.
Yes, yes. So, did that though just reinforce that you had made the right decision?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the things that was so funny to me was I happened to be the only person in the office one day, and he apparently was calling, and I kept hearing everybody else's phones ring except for mine. And I was like, I bet that's him. And sure enough, finally my phone rang and I picked it up and I answered and spoke to him. And I was like, "Are you kidding me? You're going to be a child about this and not even give me a call first when I'm your right hand person? Really?"
Yes. Like that's
So I
what's
called
so
him out.
what was his response?
He ignored it. He very quickly changed the subject and said, "Listen, I don't have much time, so I need you to do this." And I was like, "Fine, I'll do it." And I did and was done in a matter of seconds. So he wasted
Mhm.
5 minutes trying to call everybody else when I could have, just given him that information immediately. So,
Yes, you're speaking my story, Amy, because the same thing happened. This was after I left though, and I would get, emails and text messages of like, "Oh, do you like I've been looking everywhere or this, that, and the other." And I'm like, if that person had just called me, this could all have been avoided in 2 minutes. And To me, that's just an extreme lack of respect for the coworkers, because you're wasting their time, and your clients because you're potentially wasting their time as well.
Yeah,
I
it was a very interesting dynamic in how things shifted after I stood up for myself. And at that point, and coming from yoga, it's all about posture, like how you hold yourself, how strong are you? And I literally, like, my posture,
Mhm.
I was shrinking, I was closing in on myself, I was deflated. I did not feel supported anymore. And the whole thing was just like, as I look back on everything, I'm like, wow, why did I allow this to occur for such a long time? And what's really interesting is, so after I set the boundary with one of my coworkers, she then left not too long after. He ended up hiring somebody else to cover my job. That girl actually called me and said, listen, you left big shoes to fill. You have left me incredibly organized, and I cannot thank you enough for how organized you left things. She's like, this was easy to walk right into, but she's like, you really left big shoes to fill. And I was tense
Mhm.
when she called me.
Mhm.
I did go ahead and take the call, but I was tense, and I felt very on edge because I wasn't sure, like, was he going to be on the call as well? Did she just randomly call me? Like, I just did not know that dynamic and what was going to happen. But again, one of my coworkers that I had worked with had given her my number and said, give her a call. She's very open to talk to you.
Mhm.
So I did. And that conversation didn't go the way that I thought it was going to go. It went actually better. And then she asked me a few clarifying questions about my experience. And I was very honest. And she didn't stay too long after that either. She was smarter. She didn't stay over a year. She only stayed for like 6 months, I think.
What I love though about what you just said is how you left the place and your position, because it would have been very easy for you to return the energy that you received and kind of just
I,
throw
bel
your hands up
I
and
believe in karma.
yes, I'm waiting for it to come back around on some people. So, but I do too. But I do want to point that out because I think that's extremely professional. And that just again shows what kind of person you are, that what you could have done and what you did, were two different things. And you decided to leave it in an organized manner for the next person for their 6 months to come in and rock it as best they could. I know you said you didn't really talk about what you were experiencing. Did you see other people experiencing the same thing as you while you were there?
No, because we had two different departments. So everybody else was in one department and I worked solely with him. Actually, no, that's not true, because before I left, he did have somebody else assisting him. Yeah. So yes, the behavior, what? Okay. So thank you for bringing that up, because I had forgotten about that part. But yes, there were two other people who were assisting him at different times. So one left, she didn't stay long at all. And then the other one came in. Um, so yeah, it was, I think they had a different perspective, but I just, at that point, while I was there, I just was head down,
Mhm.
and I wasn't going out with everybody at lunch anymore. I just was disconnected from the whole team at that point. I was exhausted. I wasn't sleeping well, which is unusual for me. I love my sleep. So that was kind of another thing that I'm like, why am I grinding my teeth? What is
Mm.
this about?
Are you one of those people that like falls asleep right when your head hits the pillow?
Almost, yes.
Mm. I need a little of that in my life. So, you talked about you were there with your head down, literally, and you mentioned that earlier that kind of you had caved in physically. What other physical or emotional issues did you notice as you were still there?
Well, as far as like losing my other friends,
Mhm.
because this work situation was just so consuming to my every moment, having that interaction with my roommate, that was a big, like that literally was a big aha moment for me. um I was starting to get more headaches, which was interesting as well. I wasn't wearing glasses at that point, but it wasn't too long after that that I did start to have to go into wearing glasses. So it was, and this is not the first time that in my life that I have had these types of experiences before. So I come from a family where my father was verbally abusive. And so some of the things right before I left, and then the ignoring part
Mhm.
that my boss did, those were the same type of behaviors that I had already dealt with in my life by my father. And so those types of things, and I think this is kind of bad to say, but I just laugh at them.
Mhm.
Like when the phone call situation where he was calling everybody else and I answered the phone because we had caller ID on our
Mhm.
phones. And I answered the phone and I was like, you've got to be kidding me that you could not just call me directly. Like I called him out on it. And I have done that with my father as well. So it was a very interesting dynamic in that regards.
Do you feel like that's why you put up with it for as long as you did? Because in a sense, it was something you had experienced, and so you kind of felt comfortable in that
So
situation?
yeah, it's a great point to bring up. I honestly want to say that I wanted to have the approval of how great of a job I was doing. I can say that now. It took me a long time to understand that particular role. Um, but I've been reflecting on that, preparing for you. And I can honestly say that I did. I wanted to have approval about doing a really good job and making him money. And when I think back, I was like, I made him a heck of a lot of money in a short amount of time. So it's yeah, it was interesting.
Did you ever get that approval from him?
I want to say probably that first year, I would say I did get approval. And that first year that I was there was really awesome. I was there a total of I want to say I think it was a year and 6 months that I was there total. And that last 6 months is when everything just went to hell. He started trying to control me, and that was the biggest red flag. And that's when I started noticing the difference in how he was, not just treating me, but treating other people. And it happened to be women.
Mhm.
I will say that it did happen to be women in those roles supporting him. Um, but he also hired very strong women. So it's not like we were all pushovers. It's just that the others didn't stay as long as I did. Um, and that's okay. Like I had, for the most part, I had a really, really wonderful experience there. And I still talked to a few of the people that I worked with, which is great. Um, but yeah, I gave up a lot of myself and my own happiness, um, to gain that approval.
It's almost like what we're talking about here is a form of an abusive relationship. And we don't often think of that our workplace can be an abusive environment. As you look back now, do you feel like that first year when everything was really great, that almost he was grooming you
Mhm.
to take the abuse going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
How does that make you feel in looking back on it? Because this was somebody, and I don't know that you guys were friends, but it was somebody that you knew. So you kind of expect a little more from those people. So how does that make you feel now?
Well, so he built that trust level up, and um in everything that I've dealt with in my life at this point, my father was a narcissist. I was very familiar.
Mhm.
And like you just mentioned, that first year, was he grooming me? Absolutely. The gaslighting was absolutely present. In that last 6 months, that was absolutely present. And being isolated from others within the team,
Mhm.
that also became present. And that's one of the things that I think, and I don't know if I want to generalize this as women in general, or if men, probably men experience this as well with a very domineering female boss. But when you get to that point where you notice within yourself that you are not radiating an ounce of happiness, I got to the point where I would look at myself in the mirror and it's like, who is that? So when we started this conversation, you mentioned about my smile. That smile was not present in that last 6 months in particular.
How hard is that to realize that this person that wasn't a romantic relationship had that much control over your emotions and your
Well,
happiness?
yeah, and the fact that I allowed it. So now, again, now I can understand that no, this wasn't right, that something needed to shift, that I needed to step in to setting my own boundaries and being more clear about when is an appropriate time to talk about business. Sunday night is not an appropriate time to call me.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it was a very interesting dynamic in that regards. And yes, the fact that we were not romantically involved, there were times, we never had any kind of romance, but there were times on things that would be said that I was like, that that doesn't feel like an appropriate conversation. And we didn't have an HR department, we didn't have, and being in the construction industry, I
Mhm.
always blew that off, that type of conversation with guys, because I've experienced that from my early 20s when I first got into design. But I just kind of rolled with it because it's like, well, that's what they do. And see how
Mhm.
different 20 years can be. Actually longer than that now, but
Well,
yeah.
yes and no, because as you were telling that story, I was thinking about myself as a police officer. Now, I grew up with older brothers, and so I do consider myself to be very laid back and accepting of all kinds of crazy behavior, and it genuinely doesn't bother me. But I feel like when you're in those male dominated fields, you are expected to let it roll off
Roll
your back,
off. Mhm.
or you're the whiny woman. Did you experience that as well?
I think I just went into it with that behavior, that mindset going into it.
Mhm.
Again, because it was part of the construction industry, I just think I had already mentally placed myself into that situation. Um, but Every now and again, though, I think I had to just kind of pause and go, yeah, that's not cool. Try rewording that and let's start again. And again, when you start stepping up to somebody like that, that's also when that friction starts to take place. And so the comfort level of conversation, I mean, he had two kids that were not, I don't think they were quite teenagers at the time. I even watched the kids one time. I stayed the weekend because he had to go away. Again, I felt weird about doing that. And he's like, oh, just sleep in my bed. And I was like, oh, hell no. I'm not sleeping in your bed. I am sleeping on the sofa. And I took my own sheets, my own pillow. But
Was he
it's that.
single?
Yes.
Was he ready to mingle?
Yes. Not with me. Not with me.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not
No.
saying on your end, but it makes
No.
you wonder.
I don't, I never got that kind of feel, like that uncomfortable feel. I never had that kind of feel. Like this whole thing about me watching his kids, you're bringing up all these things that I'd totally forgotten about.
Sorry, it's my
But
job.
yeah,
I'm so sorry.
yeah, that's good though. But it was one of those situations though, like I did a hard no. Nope, not sleeping in your bed. That is against everything I'm for. Thank you.
Yeah, creepy is how I would
Yes.
probably describe that. Let's talk about boundaries because that seems to be well, that's a great segue, but you know, it seems to be an issue, you know, that you said you had with the work calls and things like that. Now you didn't have an issue with the bedroom boundary, so that's great. What was it like for you once you were able to start setting boundaries, whether it was there or, you know, on in since then? What difference has that made in the quality of your life and your work life?
Well, one thing I have always known about myself, I'm an entrepreneur. For me to work for somebody else, I don't like being told what to do, when to do it. Like if I want to work at midnight, I'm going to work at midnight. I don't like being told you have to be here at 8 a.m. I'm not a morning person. I don't want to sit and waste time in rush hour traffic. Like that's so coming off of that, that job, that was something that really came back to me that much stronger. Who am I? What do I want to do? What brings me happiness? What type of situation do I want to be in? And like I said, I've been teaching yoga for 24 years, and then it just went back to, okay, well, I'm going to go back to teaching in studios. And so I did that, went to gyms and started teaching, building my clientele base once again. And one thing that had been in my mind for quite a while was, I know I can do this from home and not have to travel around, not have to participate. And it's, I had a brick and mortar from 2017 till March of 2020, and everything slowed down. And I was like, okay, so my answers are happening right now. I don't have to have the overhead. I don't have to travel. People can be at the privacy of their own homes and still enjoy a class and still have that time to be able to understand what works for their body. So it coming off of that job and that whole situation and the lack of boundaries then began to provide a much different direction for my life and much more happiness. I mean, yeah, I don't get paid a whole bunch like I did, but I can at least smile again.
And I think that is hard for some people to understand sometimes, that money really isn't everything. You have to have that happiness and that fulfillment, and that is far more important. Would you say, I mean, nobody would say COVID was a blessing, but in the fact that it allowed you to pivot, was it a blessing for you? And do you think, had that not happened, you would still be in your brick and mortar building and doing in-person classes?
No, I had actually already started having the conversation with my landlord in 2019. And that that allowed me to get out of my lease. And he's also a small business owner, so he totally understood. Um, and so to go from being controlled to
Mhm.
then having a landlord that was actually coaching me, that's very unusual.
Right.
But he was such a godsend to me, to be honest. My previous landlord, he he just understood, and he was like, what you're doing is wonderful, but it's not a moneymaker. He was like, you need to be teaching a lot more classes, but physically you can't be doing that. You're going to run yourself down. But this way, working from home and doing everything through Zoom, yes, it has been very healing for me, because I was starting to get very angry. And that's not who I am. And I'm an energy healer, I'm a yoga instructor. Like, being angry is not who I am. That stress, that of the overhead of the whole experience, that was just so weighing on me. And I just finally got to the point where I was like, okay, so places are closing. My clientele, for the most part, was older. And I'm like, I can't do this to them. I'm not putting them in harm's way. We're closing shop. And I walked everybody through how to work with Zoom. I gave them one-to-one sessions with that, and they absolutely appreciated that extra support that I gave to them early on. And then they ended up using Zoom to talk to their other friends. Like, then they could coach their other friends how to use it. So it became a very positive situation. And I've always said, in business, I'm an extrovert, but personally, I'm an introvert. And the introvert in me was just like, oh, thank God. I don't have to run around. I don't have to be around a bunch of people. I can rest. I can take a nap if I want to take a nap in the middle of the day. I can schedule that in.
I would love to schedule in naps, so I'm gonna have
Hey,
to work on that.
I teach a class all on naps, and it is the best class ever. And we're getting ready to start up another one later this month.
I I am all in for a nap class. So I told you earlier that I'm the Tin Man when it comes to yoga. So I think, I would love Zoom yoga because I wouldn't have that self-consciousness of other people seeing how sad I was in attempting some of the yoga poses. So have you found for your clients that it has been successful and that they enjoy it more because they don't have to leave the house, they don't have to worry about other people seeing their 10-man selves as well?
So the only thing that I ask people to do is to wear clothes and put on their camera. You don't have to wear a bra and underwear, that's fine, but you do have to wear clothes, and you do have to turn on your camera, because I need to see what that energy is
Right.
coming off of you, and what you're experiencing in a pose as well. So I need to make sure your alignment's working. And then if it's not, then I tell you what else you can do instead so you're more comfortable. But I have to tell you, one of the very first clients that I ever had when I taught yoga was also the 10 man. I literally, our first time, I mean, and I was young and dumb and trying to understand how to teach, when you enter into something new, you're like, what do I do? What do I
Mhm.
say? Why isn't her body doing what I'm doing? Like, it was the craziest thing. But I went up behind her. She was doing a forward fold. I put my hand in her mid back to kind of help. And it was literally like a spring. And she stood straight up and said, "Yep, not going to happen."
I know the only thing that folds around here are my knees and my clothes. So it's not going to happen. Microwaves, often have warning labels on them. And the reason that they have them is because someone has done the things that they are now warning against. So I have to ask, did the "you must wear clothes" originate because somebody wasn't wearing their clothes?
Yep. And they thought their camera was off. Don't take me to the bathroom during class. I don't need to see anything, and I don't need to see anything else beyond that. No.
And you've already been there on the phone with a guy going to the bathroom. Like, we don't need
Yep.
to repeat
Yep.
history.
Well, and what's so funny is that with Zoom yoga, it's just me speaking. You don't have the extra distraction. So you can do this whole feature about mute everybody and don't let them unmute themselves.
Nice.
And there's a reason for that too. But in a yoga studio platform, so when you're there and you've got, 10, 20, 30 people or whatever around you, there's always that one person who's going to let out a fart midway through class. Right? So it's always like, it doesn't fail. There's always that one person, and it'll switch. It'll be somebody else. It's like musical chairs. Somebody else will make that happen. But from the standpoint of, you don't have those additional sounds. But what is hysterical to me, a lot of my clients have cats. This is one thing I've been noticing. So I'll get like the cat butt in front of the camera or something unusual, which is hysterical. That makes me giggle midway through class. So it's a little different.
All these things that you didn't think you'd have to work through for a Zoom class. I just figured clothes would not be optional.
That's a whole other ball game, and I don't do that.
Call me crazy. Yeah, that's a different type of class, I feel like, altogether.
Yes.
So do you feel like everything that you went through that kind of allowed you to reinvent yourself, reinvent your boundaries, redo your business and kind of ramp that up, has that also improved the rest of your life? Are you sleeping better? No more headaches? Like, did all of that go away as well?
Absolutely. So, and what I have started for myself this year, I had been looking at this. I love being on the water. Now, we don't really have a bunch of water here in Arizona, but we do have a few little lakes. So I bought a kayak. And one of the things that I was looking into, I'm like, some of these kayaks are just so big, they're heavy. I can't put it on my roof, like, whatever. So I found a folding kayak, and I absolutely love it. And I have found a couple of little lakes that, aren't ginormous by any means, but it's just the act of putting myself out on the water that just brings a completely different viewpoint to me. I'm floating around with the ducks. I think I must have been reincarnated as a duck. I don't know.
I mean, they are pretty cool.
They are cool. Yes. But it's that to me, taking that time for myself, that was one of the biggest things that I wanted to do this year. And so that was my Christmas present to myself last year.
Well, Merry Christmas to you. What advice would you give to somebody who is in that workspace and maybe they're not seeing the red flags, but they're going home miserable, and they have their roommate saying, "It's been a month and I haven't talked to you, and you're just now noticing"? What would you say to those people?
Yeah, the first aha moment that you realize that something has shifted within the workplace, write it down in your calendar,
I love that.
write it down, get it out of your head. The first time that you feel like you can't catch a deep breath, like something is different, like you've been punched in the gut, that kind of feel,
Mhm.
write it down in your calendar and start noticing when those episodes, I
Mhm.
am going to call it an episode because it is like a temper tantrum. How that type of individual treats you is very cyclical.
Mhm.
Like you can start to see a pattern. Then, so that now the third
Mhm.
thing is, then track what was the conversation that made that trigger happen. So this is on you. This is your responsibility. And I actually started doing that. That last 6 months of that
Mhm.
job, that's when things really started to shift for me. And I started tracking things. And I'm like, okay, something's not right. And I was trying to observe what was going on, maybe within the office, within the business. I didn't know personally what was going on. But from the standpoint of starting to see the pattern, and then how close are those episodes getting?
Mhm.
So for me, it would be like once or twice a month, I started noticing some things. Then it became 6 times. Then it started increasing. And when that increase happened, that's when I was like, nope, I'm done. I am not your punching bag. I'm done.
I feel like that's amazing advice for any type of relationship that feels unhealthy, that you start to write it down and notice, like you said, what is triggering that, what precipitated it, and then you have a really objective look at what is actually going on in that particular relationship, whether it's work, a friendship, a romantic relationship, and can help you really dig in and identify whether you're in a healthy situation or not.
Yeah, and that's true, like you said, not just from a work perspective. It
Mhm.
is if you've got a spouse or a boyfriend or girlfriend who is doing these certain things. One of the things though that I want to mention, because I do work with a lot of domestic violence um, situations,
Mhm.
and unfortunately, I lost one of my clients to gunshot on Christmas Day. He
Wow.
killed he killed the wife
Mhm.
after killing his 2 children. And that one still gets me. So you do have a choice, but
Mhm.
make sure that it is a safe choice. And I need to emphasize that because if you are in a relationship where you know that something's not right, bruises on you is not right. That's a physical thing. And a lot of people can see that. And he will, I say he, that's usually what I'm dealing with.
Mhm.
But I know it can be reversed where a woman could be physically assaulting a husband or boyfriend. But from the perspective of don't allow the lies to take over. No, you did not run into a wall. No, you didn't pinch yourself. From a physical standpoint,
Mhm.
be clear, don't cover it up, and take action sooner rather than later because the outcomes can be just literally deadly. There are so many places. And I just since I'm on this role right now,
Mhm.
one of the best resources that I have found, it's a website. It's not specific to any area, but they have information for US, Canada. It's called Domestic Shelters. It's plural, domesticshelters.org. And I actually started looking up more information on their website about gaslighting, about some of these issues that I had never heard of, and yet I had experienced. And it gave me a lot more clarity. If you start feeling like you're crazy, you are dealing with verbal abuse. That was a huge aha for me with my dad. That was a huge aha. Then it was a boyfriend that I had that situation with. Don't let yourself get pulled in. Let yourself stand taller, get out of the situation faster, educate yourself.
I'm glad you brought up that resource. First off, it is an amazing website. It will also tell you if you're looking at shelters, it will tell you what shelters are pet friendly as well. So that's a great resource to have. I will definitely get that up on the screen for the people who are viewing this. And I want to piggyback on something that you said when it comes to safety. If it is a romantic relationship and you're going to document things, please make sure that you do it somewhere that the abusive partner cannot find it. So
Yes.
whether that's on paper at work or on your phone or wherever, though, that person can't find it, or if you have to put it in some sort of secret code. There's also apps on your phone that you can download that look like something entirely different. So there are apps that look like a calculator and function like a calculator, but when you type in a specific code, it opens up and it's actually a place where you can store pictures, data, other things. So
Oh, I'm curious about that.
yeah, so I'll tell you about that once we're done because I'll have to find it. But yeah, I think there's a couple of them. But yeah, on its face, it looks like a calculator and it functions like a calculator as well. So if somebody else were to open it, it would work just like it should. But then there's a back end into it where you can store things. So yeah, so let's just reiterate the safety aspect of if you are going to document things, to do it in a way that's safe and cannot be discovered. It's also always a great idea to give somebody else that information, or to know, let them know, hey, I'm storing this information here. Here's the password, here's where you can locate it. It's just always good to have that backup, and that additional support person that knows where to find the information.
So Claudia, one thing I want to mention about that, because what I've witnessed with a lot of people who are going through situations like this, watch who you trust with information. And the other pieces is to, if somebody asks you if you've been physically abused and they ask you, it's okay to admit it, because there are people out there who want to help, but also who do not want to put you in harm's way. So there's a lot of savior people out there who want to save you, who want to help, but they also need to understand from your perspective in that relationship to understand your boundary with your relationship. And that's another big thing. So there is a level of being cautious, but if you go to a support group, if you have a sponsor, like Codependence Anonymous is a really great one, because unfortunately that is one of the situations, being a codependent. If you are in a 12-step program, you might have a sponsor or somebody in that group that would be a safe person to talk with. If you're taking yoga classes and you have a teacher that you trust, whatever the situation is, I personally have seen where somebody has told a family member and that did not go over well. So I just want to bring that part up as well, just from experiences that I've had.
And I'm so glad you did. And it's hard because these people are already in a vulnerable situation and they're like, but how do I know who to trust? So do your best. But I like what you said, sometimes it might be an instructor, a therapist, a doctor. It might not be the family or friends. It might be, but I agree with you. Be careful who you're sharing with and how much you're sharing, and just make sure it's a very safe space.
Yeah. And I don't want to be Debbie Downer on that at all. But it pains me when I see situations occur and when I hear it from my clients. So I just wanted to be clear on that.
I'm so glad that you did. Well, before I let you go, we are going to talk about something a little lighter.
Yeah, we got
And
heavy there. Oh,
I know. We just like really
let's
really
all
got
take it.
into it.
Let's all take a deep breath, shall
Yeah,
we?
just second for a deep breath, 5.5 seconds in, 5.5 seconds out. So we're going to talk tattoos. Now, I know you can't tell today because I have on long sleeves and I don't have face tattoos. That's a whole other episode. But I love tattoos. They tell a story. Now, I know that you don't have tattoos and we're still friends. That's okay. I know why you don't have tattoos, though. It is primarily because of the pain factor. So here's what I'm going to put out for you. It doesn't cost any money and it doesn't hurt. And you can snap your fingers and you can make it go away when you need to. So with all these parameters, what tattoo would you get?
Do you need to know where to?
I mean, if you want to share, but you don't
Okay.
have to.
So I think here on my wrist is kind of a reminder, and it's a spiral because our energy in that movement, now it's not a spiraling out of control. Let's be clear on that. But it's the energy to draw in, and right in the middle of it, I would have the Om symbol. So universal connection. I think that's what I would do.
I love it. You can get like long lasting temporary tattoos. You could try it out.
I have done henna tattoos. I have done my own henna tattoos and I loved them. They're just kind of time consuming and then they do disappear after a while. But I am a big baby when it comes to needles. I
totally get it. So, but I'm glad you had something in mind. So if the painless tattoo comes out, you will be there probably second in line to get it.
Well, and I had a girlfriend when I was out of college, I had a girlfriend who had a butterfly on her belly and then she got pregnant.
And then it was like a pterodactyl.
So we've always laughed about that, but I was like, yeah, no.
I love it. Well, Amy, you have been amazing. Where can people find you? So if they want to do yoga with you, if they want to do some breathing exercises and calm down, if they just want to come hang out and bake in the Phoenix sun, where can people find you?
Yeah, just go to my name, Amy Stephens, and I'm a STEPHENS.net. Go to my website. It's a general website that gives you an overview of everything that I do. And then it'll direct you over to the Yoga Amy website if you want to do that too. So yeah, I am great at putting people to sleep. So if you need to go to sleep and you need to have great deep relaxation, I am your gal.
I am coming to you for that. If you can change my sleep life, then I'm all in.
And it's all done via Zoom. You don't even have to be in my neck of the woods. I've worked with clients overseas. Yes, and I can put people to sleep anywhere. It's fabulous.
I am there for that. Amy, you have been truly amazing. I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for sharing not only the struggles that you went through, but how you have rebounded and turned everything around for the better so that you can now help other people as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Claudia.
I really hope you guys enjoyed my conversation with Amy as much as I did. I truly appreciate her sharing her story and talking about some of the red flags that she missed. I'm so glad that she's now able to set boundaries and is happier and healthier in her career. So remember, until next week, you are strong enough and you are worth it. Thank you for listening to the Strong Enough podcast. You can find us on your favorite podcast platform by searching Strong Enough. And on YouTube, we're on the Spear Talk channel. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Strong Enough Pod. If you have suggestions for an upcoming episode or a future guest, please reach out at strongenoughpod@gmail.com. Remember, you are worth it.